To truly understand the 500 FCFA coin, its meaning, its controversy, and its power, we must journey back, not just a few decades, but to a time when Africa was not in control of its own destiny. The year is 1945. World War II has just ended. Across Europe, empires are crumbling, and yet, France is determined to keep a tight grip on its colonial territories in Africa. As the French government rebuilt itself from the ashes of war, it needed resources, gold, raw materials, food, and for that, it needed its colonies. But there was one crucial lever of control that France held firmly in its grasp: money. On December 26, 1945, the French government established a new colonial currency. They called it the Franc des Colonies Françaises d'Afrique, the CFA franc. It was designed not only to facilitate trade but to cement France's monetary control over its African colonies. 1 franc in the colonies was worth exactly 1.70 French francs, and the colonies had no say in the exchange rate, no autonomy, no central bank of their own. France dictated the value. France printed the money. France called the shots. With the CFA franc, France built a financial bridge, or perhaps more accurately, a leash, between itself and 14 African nations. The colonial system may have ended on paper, but the monetary connection was stronger than ever. Currency is not just about economics, it's about power. Whoever controls your money can control your economy, and whoever controls your economy can control your future. The CFA franc allowed France to extract wealth from African economies, while minimizing its own financial risk. Exports like cocoa, coffee, uranium, and oil were priced and paid for in a currency pegged to the French franc, a system that benefited France more than it did African producers. African governments could not devalue the currency. They could not print money. They couldn't even manage interest rates, even after many African nations gained independence in the 1960s. The CFA system remained intact. France had simply changed the language and kept the control. The acronym CFA was quietly redefined. Now it stood for Communauté Financière Africaine, the African Financial Community. But make no mistake, the rules had not changed. Over time, the CFA system evolved into 2 zones. 1. West African CFA franc, XOF, used by 8 countries, including Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. 2. Central African CFA franc, XAF, used by 6 countries, including Cameroon, Chad, and Gabon. Each zone had its own central bank: BCEAO in West Africa, BEC in Central Africa, but both operated under the same principle, a fixed exchange rate to France's currency. First the French franc, then the euro. Today, both the XOF and XAF are pegged to the euro, not because of African choice, but because of French design. In the early decades, CFA coins were minted in France, then shipped to the African colonies. They were made of aluminum or bronze, and featured imagery like palm trees, African masks, or farming tools. But these coins weren't designed to celebrate African identity. They were designed to symbolize productivity, the colonial dream of a rich, export-driven Africa serving Europe. The coins were small, light, and insignificant in the monetary system, reflecting the limited purchasing power of most African citizens. There was number 500 FCFA coin yet. It wouldn't come until later, when inflation, urban growth, and economic transformation demanded a higher value coin for daily use. In earlier decades, 500 CFA francs was a large amount of money, enough to buy a full basket of food or a week's worth of rice. It was issued only as a banknote and carefully guarded in wallets and purses. But as inflation crept in, and as African economies modernized, central banks realized that lower denomination banknotes were wearing out too quickly. They needed something durable, practical, and cost-effective. And so, the idea of the 500 FCFA coin was born. The 500 FCFA coin, when it finally arrived, wasn't just another coin in your pocket. It represented a shift in how money was used, a shift in how African economies viewed daily transactions, a shift in how currency design could reflect or erase African identity. But it also became something deeply personal. It's the coin you give to a beggar. It's the coin you use for a taxi ride across town. It's the coin a child takes to school for lunch. It's powerful, but small. Common, yet essential. And in many ways, it is the face of modern African currency. A simple piece of metal that carries within it the complex weight of colonial history, economic struggle, and national pride. So the next time you hold a 500 FCFA coin, ask yourself, is this just a coin? Or is it a story of a people, a continent, and a currency still seeking full independence? Imagine 8 nations, each with its own language, history, economy, and culture, all sharing one single currency. That's not fiction. It's the reality of West Africa's monetary union, a union that revolves around a coin you may carry in your pocket every day, the 500 FCFA. But how did this happen? Why would independent countries agree to use the same currency? And more importantly, one still tied to their former colonizer? In the 1960s, when French colonies across West Africa gained independence, they faced a daunting question. Do we go it alone with our own currencies, or do we stay together? The answer, for 8 countries, was unity. They chose to preserve the CFA franc but administer it collectively, through a regional institution. Thus, in 1962, the West African Monetary Union was born. Today, it is known as UEMOA, the Union Économique et Monétaire Ouest Africaine. At the heart of this union is the BCEAO, the Banque Centrale des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Headquartered in Dakar, Senegal, the BCEAO serves as the central bank for the entire monetary union. Its job: 2. Issue currency, including coins like the 500 FCFA, manage inflation, regulate commercial banks, maintain the fixed exchange rate with the euro. It sounds like any other central bank. But here's the twist. Unlike the US Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank, the BCEAO does not fully control its own monetary policy, because at the end of the monetary chain sits a powerful partner, France. France plays a unique and controversial role in the CFA system. It guarantees the CFA franc's convertibility with the euro, meaning that any amount of CFA francs can always be exchanged for euros at a fixed rate. This offers stability. It keeps inflation low. It reassures investors. But it comes at a cost. To maintain that guarantee, 50% of the BCEAO's foreign exchange reserves were, until very recently, required to be held in the French treasury. In other words, Africa's money had to sit in France. Many African economists have criticized this as a form of financial servitude, a colonial system, reborn in modern clothing. But to be fair, the system does offer real benefits, especially for trade and travel. A merchant in Burkina Faso can sell goods in Ivory Coast without worrying about exchange rates. A traveler from Benin can use their 500 FCFA coin in Togo seamlessly. There are no conversion fees, no fluctuations, no extra risks. This makes the CFA franc one of the most stable currencies in Africa. And coins like the 500 FCFA have become a symbol of this everyday integration, a tool of convenience across borders. But economic stability isn't everything. Critics argue that the fixed exchange rate and strict monetary controls have slowed down growth in many West African economies. Local governments can't print money to stimulate their economies. They can't easily respond to global shocks. And they're often stuck with European-style fiscal discipline, even when their people need spending, jobs, and investment. The CFA franc, and by extension, coins like the 500 FCFA, are often said to benefit foreign companies more than African citizens. Because the exchange rate is artificially strong, imported goods become cheap, and local products become expensive in comparison. That means French and European companies can flood West African markets with their goods, from wine and cheese to medicine and machinery, while African farmers struggle to sell abroad. So yes, the 500 FCFA coin makes regional trade easier, but it may also make global competition harder. Despite the controversy, there's something powerful about a single coin, used by millions, across 8 nations, in dozens of languages. The 500 FCFA is accepted whether you're buying tea in Bamako, taking a taxi in Cotonou, shopping in the markets of Dakar, or tipping a musician in Abidjan. It crosses borders. It crosses cultures. It binds a region together, even when politics and language divide it. And for many people, the 500 FCFA is not just currency. It's connection. But beneath this convenience lies a burning question, one that grows louder every year. Can a truly independent nation share its currency with others, while still depending on Europe to manage it? For some, the answer is no. They want reform. They want freedom. They want a currency that reflects their own choices, not those made in Paris or Brussels. For others, the risk of economic instability is too great. They argue that the CFA franc and the 500 FCFA coin protect their economies from chaos. It's a debate that shows no signs of ending. So what does the 500 FCFA coin truly represent? Is it a token of unity, a symbol of a shared African vision? Or is it a polished relic of colonial control? Perhaps it is both. It's practical, yet political. It's ordinary, yet historical. And in your pocket, it may seem like just a coin. But in the story of West Africa, it's a powerful chapter. In the next episode, we'll look at the birth of the 500 FCFA coin itself, where it came from, how it was designed, and what it says about African identity in metal form. For decades, the 500 CFA franc was only a banknote, colorful, lightweight, and easy to tear or wear out. It was worth something, but also vulnerable. But something began to shift in the 1990s. African cities were growing. Inflation was creeping in. And the cash economy, the physical exchange of coins and notes, was becoming more intense than ever. Suddenly, carrying small stacks of fragile paper wasn't enough. The central banks of West Africa needed a solution. And they found it in a coin. A coin strong enough to last. A coin heavy enough to matter. A coin that would become the daily heartbeat of West African life. Before the coin, the 500 FCFA existed only as a banknote, issued by the BCEAO and printed in Europe, featuring portraits, traditional symbols, and sometimes abstract patterns. It was popular, but it had a flaw. It wore out too fast. Banknotes are made of cotton fiber. They're cheaper to produce, but fragile. In the heat, rain, and dust of West African markets, the average 500 CFA note lasted less than a year before it needed to be replaced. So in the early 2000s, the BCEAO made a strategic decision. Let's take one of our most used denominations and make it a coin instead. It was a shift that reflected not just inflation, but modernization. The first 500 FCFA coins were issued in 2003. Minted in France, as most CFA coins still are, these coins were bimetallic. A silver-colored ring made of cupronickel, a gold-colored center made of aluminum bronze. This design wasn't random. It was meant to mimic the euro coins, symbolizing economic alignment with Europe, and to stand out in people's hands and pockets. On one side of the coin, the value, 500 with franc CFA and the year of minting. On the other side, a stylized African mask, or sometimes a representation of agriculture or unity, depending on the issue. This was not just a design. It was a statement. Africa, yes, but within a French design framework. Money is never neutral. Every symbol, every image, is a choice. The 500 FCFA coin attempted to balance tradition with utility. It used African imagery, stylized, Pan-African, and somewhat generic. But the coin itself was designed in France, minted in France, and controlled by French economic standards. Even though it was made for African people, it was not made by them, not entirely. This led to criticism. Why not feature actual African leaders? Why not showcase real national achievements? Why not let countries mint their own designs? The answer, again, came down to centralization, a shared currency across. 8 countries couldn't carry the identity of one without offending another. So the 500 FCFA coin remained neutral, Pan-African, and politically cautious. Ask anyone in West Africa about the 500 FCFA coin, and they'll likely smile. Not because it's a fortune, but because it's familiar. In urban areas, it's used for taxi rides, quick street meals, phone credit, water and bread, school snacks. In villages, it's often the highest value. Coin people handle daily, a reliable piece of metal, passed hand to hand across markets, mosques, and family gatherings. It's durable, it's trustworthy, and in places where digital banking hasn't fully taken hold, it's essential. But like all currency, the 500 FCFA coin has felt the pressure of inflation. In 2003, it might buy you a full street meal, a kilo of rice, a bottle of gas, change from a doctor's visit. Today, it may only buy a bottle of water, a small bag of peanuts, a short taxi ride. The coin's value has shifted, but it still holds power. Not because of its buying capacity, but because of its presence. It's the coin most people see, touch, and trust more than any note. The popularity of the 500 FCFA coin has also made it a target. Fake coins, often made of cheaper metals, have popped up in informal markets. Some are nearly identical to the real thing, while others are easily spotted by weight or sound. To combat this, the BCEAO introduced updated security features, unique metal compositions, specific weights and dimensions, detailed edge engravings, and most importantly, public awareness campaigns to teach people how to spot the difference. Since its introduction, the 500 FCFA coin has gone through subtle redesigns. Fonts updated, edge patterns modified, metallic finish improved. These changes were often minor, but symbolic. They reflected the constant balancing act. How to modernize without disrupting the trust people place in the coin. After all, in West Africa, a 500 FCFA coin isn't just money. It's a social tool. There's a psychology to using coins, especially one as distinct as they. 500 FCFA. It's too valuable to give away lightly, too small to hoard in bulk, too visible to lose easily. And so, it circulates fast and often. It's the first coin you reach for when tipping. It's the default price for snacks, services, favors. It's the last coin you hesitate to give your child, just in case they lose it. It's emotional value, tied to practical worth. But even this widely accepted coin has its limits. In border zones, some traders still prefer foreign currency. In remote villages, barter may replace cash altogether. And in digital cities, coins are slowly giving way to mobile money platforms. Yet the 500 FCFA coin persists. Because for millions, it's still easier to find than an ATM. Still more trusted than a QR code. Still more tangible than a balance on a screen. The 500 FCFA coin is more than currency. It's a solution to fragile banknotes, a symbol of shared identity, a reminder of colonial influence, a snapshot of daily life across a diverse region. From design to distribution, it reflects the complexities of a modern Africa, striving for unity, facing economic pressure, and carrying forward traditions, all in a single coin. In the next chapter, we'll look even deeper at the design and symbolism of this coin. Why was it crafted this way? What do its images really mean? And does this coin reflect Africa's soul, or its chains? When you look closely at a coin, what do you really see? A number? A piece of metal? Or something deeper? Money is more than just a medium of exchange. It's a mirror, reflecting the identity, power, and priorities of the people who make it. And in the case of the 500 FCFA coin, that reflection is complicated. Because every line, every curve, every symbol on this coin carries meaning, some cultural, some political, some even controversial. Let's decode the language of design etched in metal. Let's start with the side that most people recognize instantly. Front and center, 500, the denomination. Surrounding it, the words francs CFA, in crisp, capital letters. And typically, at the center or offset, a stylized African mask. But this isn't a specific mask from any one ethnic group. It's not Yoruba, Ashanti, Fulani, or Dogon. It's something more generic. It's a Pan-African symbol, deliberately chosen to avoid favoring one country or culture over another. The mask design is abstract, simplified lines, smooth shapes, closer to modernist art than actual traditional craft. This was intentional. The goal was to represent Africa without representing any single African nation. A coin for all, and for none in particular. In many African cultures, masks are powerful spiritual objects. They represent ancestral spirits, the natural world, social roles or values, rites of passage. By placing a mask on the 500 FCFA coin, designers intended to highlight Africa's deep cultural heritage. But by stripping the mask of its tribal identity, they also removed its specific meaning. What remains is a symbol of symbolism, a nod to tradition, but not tied to it. Some see it as respectful, others see it as superficial. Now flip the coin. Depending on the year or minting batch, you might see a millet plant, symbolizing agriculture, industrial tools, symbolizing labor, a pair of interwoven lines, symbolizing unity, or even a stylized sunburst, suggesting growth and progress. Each of these images reflects a different value. Work, unity, food, development. They were chosen to project a message of modern African productivity, a continent, not of poverty or dependence, but of potential. But again, look closely. These images feel universal, almost international. They speak in a visual language shaped by European design principles, not necessarily by African artistic traditions. Here's a revealing truth. Most CFA coins, including the 500 FCFA, are designed in France, specifically at the Monnaie de Paris, one of the world's oldest mints. The designs are developed in consultation with West African officials. Yes, but the creative control, the final touches, often rest with French engravers. This raises a difficult question. Can you truly capture African identity when the art is not made in Africa? The result is a kind of visual compromise. African symbols, filtered through European aesthetics, approved by regional consensus. Some call it diplomacy, others call it colonial residue, a continuation of foreign influence, one coin at a time. When you look at global currencies, the US dollar, the British pound, the euro, they feature faces, presidents, monarchs, thinkers, builders, because the CFA system was designed to be shared across multiple countries. And it's hard to agree on one face, one flag, one language. That silence speaks volumes. The 500 FCFA coin is visually neutral, by design. No nation, no leader, no clear cultural tie. That neutrality has a purpose, to serve all users across borders, languages, and histories. But some argue that neutrality is just another form of erasure. By avoiding division, the coin avoids identity. By avoiding offense, it avoids pride. It becomes a symbol of invisible unity, strong in structure, weak in soul. Let's move beyond just the images and talk about weight and color. The 500 FCFA coin is bimetallic, silver and gold tones, heavy, larger than most coins in circulation, textured, with ridged or patterned edges. These qualities aren't just about durability, they're about psychology. Heavier coins feel more valuable. Shiny coins feel prestigious. Bimetallic coins feel official, almost governmental. By using these design choices, the 500 FCFA coin signals, I'm not just change, I'm meaningful. Even if inflation has reduced its actual purchasing power, the coin feels valuable. That's not an accident. That's design strategy. Over time, the 500 FCFA coin has become more than currency. In some communities, it's used in ceremonial gifts, turned into pendants or rings, passed down as lucky charms, saved in jars for family events. It's not just a tool. It's an object of memory. And while its images may not capture any one tribe or country, the experiences tied to it are deeply personal. Each scratch, dent, and fingerprint tells a story. As the world moves toward digital currency, the symbolism of physical coins is at risk. Apps don't carry imagery. QR codes don't tell stories. But the 500 FCFA coin still does, at least for now. Some say we should redesign it. Add local heroes. Celebrate African women. Use regional languages. Incorporate contemporary art. Others say we should move on entirely. Leave behind the CFA franc and all its symbols for a new, independent currency. maybe even the long-promised eco. But whether it's redesigned or retired, the coin has already done its job. It's told us who we were, and it challenges us to ask, who do we want to be? Every coin is a message. Every image is a choice. And every absence is a statement. The 500 FCFA coin is beautiful, but quiet, detailed, but cautious, proud, but restrained. It tells us about Africa's potential, but also its ongoing struggles for expression, identity, and control. In our next chapter, we confront the elephant in the room,